Hey, everybody. Yeah, I just want to say how chuffed I am to be here, and to everyone who might be watching this, I'm just so grateful. And to Josh and Leo, I just think you guys are amazing. And anyone who's tuning into this and here for this amazing festival, I just think it's such a brilliant thing.
So, as we know, you are both a renowned author and journalist in Australia. You're, as of today, about to publish 5 books. So tell us a bit more about yourself and who you want Trent Dalton to be to others.
Oh, it's a really beautiful question. Yeah, it's an amazing day to be talking to you guys. Literally, we send my latest book, Lola in the Mirror, to the printers today. And it's just a really special time, that. And kind of, I guess, to answer your question, who I want to be is just really a guy who gets things done. Like, and I don't mean some sort of know-how, can-do type guy. I just mean, I just want to live a life where I attempt things and I finish them. That's really starting to become really important to me these days. And I just think that's such a special thing to do. Whatever it is, I feel really good when I come to the end of a book. And the more I do it, I start to realize that is actually what it's all about. And I just get quietly proud of myself, no matter what happens from here, that just, you climb the mountain and then you come down the other side and you can start to see the river. And, yeah, so who I want to be is a guy who sees rivers all the time.
So what inspires you to become an author initially? So you started out as a journalist. Did you always plan on becoming an author?
I only thing I was good at in high school was English. And I had an incredible teacher, and please, anyone there, just hook on to those amazing mentor teachers who can kind of guide your way. I had a woman named Shirley Adams. She's recently celebrated her 90th birthday, and I sent a copy of my non-fiction book, Love Stories, and it just said, and in the inscription, it said, "Dear Shirley, all you need is love. All the Dalton boys ever needed was you." And it was just a really great way for me to go, hey, like, look what your English teaching did, and it created a writer. And so, but to be honest, where I grew up, which is sort of the edge of Brisbane, sort of working class suburbs, I didn't think a job as romantic and as kind of dreamlike as being a full-time novelist was in my reach. I genuinely didn't think that. And I worked in this job packing auto electrical car parts. And I did that for a year, but at night I wrote a lot of bad poetry and just ideas for books. Like, I had all these ideas for stories, and I would have so much fun. I would just, I'd go home on the train and I'd buy some beer on the way home, and then I'd spend that night, because this job, you could just switch your brain off. I was just packing boxes and sending them to mechanic shops around Queensland. And I'd drink beer and write story ideas. And I've still got like pages and pages on a big document I call, it's a 120-page document now, filled with just ideas, like story ideas, a sentence long, of books I want to write one day. And that goes back to when I was about 17. What I did have up my sleeve, I knew I had this sort of pretty wild backstory. That was the thing that, that I thought, I did live a pretty wild life as a kid, not by choice again, but my parents just led really wild lives, and they dragged myself and my brothers with them into worlds of drugs and drug dealing and all sorts of wild things. But I did have a sense, even then, doing that job at the age of so by then I was probably 17 going into 18, that if I got a chance to write something, I would have something really interesting to say. Of course, I didn't get that chance until 20 years later, because I left that job and that electrical box packing job, and the boss gave me a gold pen, like literally a pen to write with, which was really cool. And I did get into this course at Toowoomba, this university where you could get in with an OP16 into this course. And that led to the job that I got, my first newspaper job. And that job was really good for 20 years doing journalism work. Basically, doing that job, I wrote an article in the Weekend Australian magazine, and the editor, the head of fiction at HarperCollins Publishing, Catherine Milne, sent me an email and said, for some reason, I think you've got a book in you. And anyway, she flew up to Brisbane, my home city, and we sat down and I said, actually, I do have this story in me that I'd love to tell one day. And it's all about kind of my childhood, where my brothers and I found a secret room underneath the house of this drug dealer that my mum had fallen in love with. And this is all real. Like, if anyone's read Boy Swallows Universe out there, there's a secret room with a red telephone, and the hero Eli Bell finds that, and that red telephone leads to some very extraordinary things. And well, that all came from real life. When I was about 8 years old, my brothers and I found that room, and I'd always wondered since the age of 8 what the hell was on the end of that red telephone. And I'm told all this to Catherine Mill, and I said I want to write a book that speaks about breaking invisible walls and speaks about the love of family through hard times. And anyway, she was all up for it. I wrote that book, and that was Boy Swallows Universe, and then it was sort of all off from there. Like,
we think that you have an exceptional sense of Sonder in your writing. Do you think that your writing helps develop it, or do you think that the feeling of Sonder helps develop your writing?
Oh, I'm not just saying that. That could well be the best question I've ever been asked in like 5 years of talking about writing. That is a beautiful question. I made a career out of Sonder. I swear to God, I made a career out of it. It was my job. Like, when we were stuck for journalism articles on our paper, like on This Is the Courier Mail, like didn't even know it was called Sonder back then, but I would go do Sonder for 3 hours down the street and come back with stories. And they were often beautiful because they were just raw, and you're sitting down talking to someone and they are just telling you their life story, and you're just finding amazing things inside it. Then to the other part of your question, though, I don't know anymore whether I'm giving them something or who's getting what the dynamic is on the trade of it. And am I doing it because I've realized the great wonder of it, or are they, like, who's getting what out of it, like, and what's feeding it, and I do know, though, your question is so good because it's so true. The more you do it, the more you want to do it, and the better you are at doing it, and the more you get out of it. And so, like the last project that I did non-fiction wise was an absolute, I should have called that book Sonder, like you could have, I called it Love Stories, but I could have called it Sonder, and it's such a beautiful title. I'm sure someone will do that soon. But that's all that was. It was literally me with a sign saying, sentimental writer collecting love stories. Do you have one to share? And 200 people stopped. Like, this is a world where people are so busy. Like, it was the busiest part of my home city, Brisbane, corner of Albert and Elizabeth Street, and Albert and Ann Street, sorry. And still people stopped, still so many people stopped. And they, and because that's the power of story. Like, people will go, oh, you seriously want to listen to my story? Or many people would say, I don't have anything to say, but then I'd say, well, please tell me about someone you've lost. And that's all it would take to start. And it's so true that it is very hard to hate people when you hear their stories.
Speaking on love stories, obviously people, like, every day were sharing their highs and lows with you. I was wondering how you coped emotionally during that period when you were writing it.
Yeah, it was a strange time. Like, we'd come up the back of COVID for that, and the things I realize about that now are really fascinating. Like, I realized I was probably doing, when you ask me about emotionally what I was doing with all that stuff, it was really deep in terms of what I think it did for my own kind of marriage, and in terms of things I was hearing that I realized, damn, I could probably be better at that. It was actually very honest and very confronting, and I did a lot of deep thinking about my failings as a lover, as someone who is meant to, and what love is, and what showing love is, and I had 200 strangers tell me that in so many different beautiful ways, like someone talking about long-term love or short love or lost love. You just learn so much about it. And young love, like, there was a guy your age, guys, and he comes up and he just starts talking about this girl he met named Naomi, and he's just going, mate, you should see the color of her eyes, and you know what, she listens to this band, the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, or she's got this playlist, and she named her playlist, you know, this really cool name. And it's just like, what a girl, man. Have you ever met a girl like this? And just hearing him, you know, reminded me of what it was like to meet my wife, you know, and all of those deep, wonderful things, you know, that came out of that. And it was very much emotional, that thing. And it shows in the book. Like, I did the audio book for that, and if you listen to it, I'm like, I start crying like about 6 times. It's ridiculous. And you get me, it's got, you know, stuff on there about my late father. Yeah, it's very deep, that thing, because the topic, you know, is the most important topic on it. You know, love. There's no more important topic, you know. That's why people have been writing about it since writing began, you know. So it's it was one of the great, it was the great journalistic endeavor of my life. It was the best piece of journalism I've done.
Are there certain stories that you hold onto more dearly than others?
Yeah, the one that always stays with me is Kerry Shepherd. Kerry Shepherd, her beautiful husband passed in a really incredible circumstance where a shop front awning just collapsed on him, and it was just an old awning. It was failing, and it just dropped, and he just happened to be standing in the wrong place at the wrong time, and his final act was to push 2 young kids out of harm's way, and the only reason he was doing that, this incredible man, was because he was the type of guy who sort of punched down whenever he met kids, you know, and got on their level, which is just a beautiful thing to do. When you see people do that, it's a very thoughtful thing to do, and he was that thoughtful. And to have Kerry, just sit down with Kerry for, you know, we probably went about 2 hours, and just to have her talk about the nightly routine she goes through about, do I or do I not remove the 3 photographs that I keep of my late husband up on the fridge? She was just discussing that dilemma, because keeping the photographs up on the fridge helped me remember this beautiful man. But every time I look at those photographs, it makes me weep. And to hear her go through the process of that dilemma, and then eventually land at, and you know what, Trent, every night I decide to keep them up on the fridge. It's making me teary think about it now, but every night she comes to the conclusion that seeing him is better than crying over him, is more powerful than crying over him. And it's just the most powerful love story, you know, and just reminds me all the time of just like, man, like, if we're walking, if we're breathing, you know, we got to be grateful for it, you know, and if we're getting to spend time with these people we care about, you know, to really kind of, you know, let them know it. And I'm really over the top now. Like, I do it in emails a lot now. Ever since that book, I do a lot of, like, I did it to this guy who was just the guy who designed the cover of my latest book. I sent him this message saying how much I really loved the cover, and I just went, I love you, man. It was just like, it was so deep and unnecessary. Like, it was such a stretch, you know, to go that far. But that's the legacy of that book. And it's the legacy of Kerry Shepherd's story. That's why it's really stayed.
Something like love stories is a big thing to do. And I guess it's rare, because sometimes we live in a society where people don't listen as much as we could. And I think just opportunity to people to talk is just amazing. Yeah.
Oh, you guys would have, I'm sure you've got people in your life, your mums, or, you know, mums are really, really good at it. Like, mums are brilliant at it, where, like, my wife's mum's really good at it, and my wife's really good at it, is that sense of just like living for the people around you, you know, and just you see these mums who are just like, you know, or grandmas who now are like 75, and they're through everything, and all they live for is to just be near the people they love, and they get it. They get the meaning of life. You know, they're the ones who have the time, because they're through it. You know what I mean? They're through the hard living, and they've realized the answer. Like, they worked hard, they raised their kids. Now they might be grandparents, and they've got grandkids, and all they want to do is spend time with those grandkids, because those grandkids remind them of love. And it's just such a beautiful thing to see someone go through that process of life and come out the back end. Of course, the tragic thing is that you only realize that when you're on your sort of twilight years. You know, it's us sort of relatively young folk who forget to live like that, you know, from the age of 16 or 17, you know. And so it's sort of it's a really powerful thing that you can get from an 80-year-old, the way they treat love. Like they hang on to love like it's like they're losing it, because they are. And it's a really beautiful thing. And that's sort of what I was trying to do for that 2 months on that corner. I was just like, all right, I am going to just devote 2 months of my life to nothing but love. And that was 2 months very well spent.
I think that's such an awesome message, particularly because the Dirrum Festival's like mainly targeted towards young people. And so great to get that out there. I'm sure I'll take that to heart. Yeah. I think
brilliant.
I want to talk about your character Molly in
please. Yeah.
So she believes like good can be seen in everyone. Is this something you also believe in?
Guys, you guys are asking great questions. I'm loving it. I do. With a caveat, with conditions, you know. I'm guilty of seeing the good in too many people, and sometimes the good in people who don't really deserve it. And I'm trying to work on kind of balancing that up a bit. But I have no doubt that comes from my childhood. Like, we were kind of, you know, the guy that I first cared about, like genuinely the guy I thought, you know, very young, I thought the guy who I really genuinely thought was my dad, until he told me that he wasn't, was this really pretty dangerous drug dealer guy who went away for 10 years to prison. And I really cared about that guy. And then one of his best friends, who kind of looked after me and my brothers when this guy was away, was a guy named Slim Halliday, who was just one of the most notorious criminals in Queensland history, who escaped the inescapable Boggo Road prison twice, you know, in the 1950s. He's like a Ned Kelly of Queensland history. And, you know, he came around our house, and I loved him too. I looked up to that guy so much when I was like 5 to about 8, you know, like just at the right time where you're just kind of looking for heroes. And he spent time with me and was sweet to me. So I kind of easily loved him back. And it was only, you know, when I'm 15, 16, 17 that I realized that guy was a, you know, convicted killer, and he got put away for 30 years for killing a guy. So it comes from this idea, like genuinely when I was a kid, of probably taking love wherever I had to find it, you know, and find it in men in particular who weren't good at giving it, and really tough, hard, and sometimes dangerous men that when they did give the love, it felt really strong, you know, and felt very powerful, like very powerful when a very troubled, conflicted man with many demons shows a little bit of skerrick of love, because, you know, they haven't had much. You just know inherently that they haven't had a lot of it themselves. When they throw you something, it's very powerful. And that's where Molly Hook's thinking comes from. And Molly is absolutely a lot of me as well, like still asking the same questions. Yeah. Can you find love from bad men? And just like I sort of had to in the 1980s, Molly Hook sort of has to in the 1940s. And so it's sort of, I do believe it though. I really do. But love is a key role, you know, and you look back into any life of any crim, and any young crim who's about to become a big dangerous adult crim, I reckon love definitely plays a part. And so I'm sort of tapping into that in a lot of these stories, and I tapped into it in love stories. It's an absolute theme that I'm fascinated in, and a theme that I'm not done with by any stretch. Some of the things in my latest book, you know, totally deal with that as well. You know, when love is removed, how do you fill the space, and what do you choose to fill it with?
I feel like that's something we don't like do enough, is ensure that we make sure people know the impact their actions have.
Oh man, don't even get me started. So there was a girl that I met doing love stories on the corner, and she goes, she'd had a hard life, like, African Civil War type stuff, comes over to Brisbane. And I'm like, what's the secret? What's the secret to you? And she goes, oh, it's easy. It's easy. You just call up the person you love and you go, hey, Mum, for example. Hey, Mum. Yeah. Hey, Mum, guess what? What? I love you. That's it. Phone down. You know what I mean? It's like, hell yeah. Yeah. Simple as that. You're so right, man. You're so right. It's very powerful. Yep.
I wish we had more time because this has been beautiful. Like, just the way you think about love and like intertwining it in your work, and even like, comparing your journalism to your fictional work and like somehow implementing it all in there. It's just amazing. And it's something that's so awe-inspiring.
Hey, thanks for having me. If it is, it's all because of you guys. So thanks for the amazing questions. And what a beautiful festival. You should be so proud of yourselves. Hey, I just can't wait to see what you guys do with your own stories, Yeah, it's a real honor to be here. Thank you. And thanks for anyone who's watching. See you guys.